Alright, today I'm going to talk a little bit about footwork, both footwork that I've trained myself, footwork that I think could be useful. I might start training, and you probably should if you're into it. And then also a little bit about why my footwork is bad right now and what I personally think needs to be improved the most. So I think I'm going to actually start with one of the less obvious ones that people usually don't talk about a lot, and that's going to be Taekwondo. Because Taekwondo is actually the first martial art that I learned. I used to think that kicks were all the rage. I don't really use much anymore, but Taekwondo footwork is pretty simple for the most part, but it's odd in the goals that it has and like the positions that you're in compared to other styles. So for one, I'm already kind of in the stance a little bit. You just kind of widen your legs a little bit, and you want to keep your your ankles a little stiff, but you want your feet themselves to be bouncy, and you want your hips to be low so that you can shift like this real easy. And some people do it higher up, but I like to do it like this. And a lot of the footwork in Taekwondo is just going back and forth like that, or switching like that. But the footwork that, there's maybe some other aspects, like when you're punching, you do get a little bit of boxing stances, but for the most part, it's about keeping your legs wide, being able to cover a large distance quickly, keeping your body bladed so that you have less targets. Now, I like it for one thing is because you can use the jab with a lot less potential for striking counters than with other arts, and you can do the skip up side kick and stuff like that, so you can keep that range really good. But the weakness in this is that you're not going to be making turns like this quite as fast as with boxing, because boxing routinely gets you to the point where you're switching your legs like this, and you're doing it so much that you can do it hella fast, and you can take all kinds of small steps. So that's the weakness in it, right? Is that you can't control the angles quite as well as it with boxing. But it covers distance, creates a lot of springiness in your legs, it's good for your core, and it gives you good reach. So that's why I use a lot of Taekwondo stance, especially when I'm going southpaw. Put my left hand here, I can block or anywhere around here. I reach this one up and around. Alright, so now I'm gonna go to one that I've been loving to use, that especially easy now that I've gained weight, funny enough. But this is one that everyone hates on, I think. No one thinks it's real anyway, or thinks it works. It's Sistema. Just being able to walk anywhere pretty much. Like it's different from boxing and Taekwondo because every step you take is its own individual movement, and you don't have to have your whole system behind it. And the reason that it works okay is because in Sistema, they're striking in ways that make the footwork more or less irrelevant. So the reason I like Sistema footwork is because there are a lot of situations where you don't have the space or the timing or the grip to actually control all that much. And so Sistema is more about what direction do you want to go in, and how are you going to plant your foot and change directions. So Sistema is actually the best for changing directions, but it's the worst in terms of moving fast and in terms of super powerful kinetic chains for the larger amount of strikes. So yeah, there's a weakness, but I'd rather have that than do this if I'm in like a small space or surrounded by people or on an environment where there's a lot of stuff that's going to hit my feet. So Sistema, you're less likely to get stuck where you're walking. You can change direction faster, and you can use Sistema strikes at all times, no matter how you're moving. So I love those benefits, But like I said, the downside is you generally get weaker kinetic chains. Now there's cases where you don't, like that. That was just a normal step, normal lean into it. That's a good kinetic chain. But like I showed before, I can cross my feet and stuff like that. That's not going to be a very good kinetic chain. But I can control the chaos, right? Okay. So now I'm going to talk about boxing, which is my weakest right now, especially because of my weight. But boxing, generally, you want to have a lead foot and a rear foot. Whichever style you use, however you lean, you're going to have one foot that's usually in front and one that's usually in back. Now, it's limiting in some senses, but having that choice makes it a lot easier for you to work on the finesse and the specific details of that footwork. Like, you know, being able to do that kind of stuff, and the way people do, what is it, how do they go, like, they go bam, bam, or some shit like that. Anyways, they're able to change directions forcefully without really moving a lot. And so they're a little bit better at controlling where they're facing than Systema, but they're not as good at actually moving around in different directions. But in terms of being quick, one-on-one fights, boxing's got the best footwork for sure. You know, because boxing footwork, you're always going to be aimed one way, same as Taekwondo. So you're going to have weaknesses that you can't fight two people with that kind of footwork, because you're not going to have any power with this hand to hit over there, you know? So that's not going to work like that, going backwards. But if you have a different stance, or if you're going like Systema, and you can just shift, and if you train it, you'll be more powerful going the other way. But in boxing, like I said, they limit it because they're being more efficient with one-on-one fights. So if you plan on doing combat sports, boxing footwork's the best. If you're a regular person who wants to learn self-defense, it's still good, but it's not going to be everything you need to fight or survive being attacked multiple people. Alright, so yeah, and boxing is definitely my weakest right now because it requires so much speed and agility and endurance in your legs. You have to be able to move fast all the time, which I cannot do right now. I can't even show what it looks like. But I used to when I was lighter. So those three, I like to combine: Taekwondo, Systema, and boxing, because for me, I've been able to cover just about any angle, any situation, any kind of chain. I can just switch between them, and they pretty much cover the ranges I need for all striking. But I want to mention one more that I definitely want to learn a little bit of, because I've noticed there's some subtle nuance that I think can be quite powerful. And now I think a lot of people know this to some degree, but Muay Thai, the reason their kicks are so good, aside from the fact of the way they train them, is their actual stance. Like, I can't even really do it, but it's like, they have this stance where like all of their leg is very subtly placed on the back leg, but it looks like they're standing with both legs, except you can tell they have this leg lifted a little bit, but they look solid and planted, right? And they're able to shift all that weight from one spot, you know? And one thing it does is they make these really small, subtle movements, because in Muay Thai, they're not as good at getting in and out of range as boxing, but they're a lot more patient with getting in range. And they're a lot, you know, more clean, I think, with most entries than boxing. Boxing has a lot of rough entries. But so yeah, I really want to learn some Muay Thai footwork, because then maybe I can learn those leg chops and use some kicks, because leg chops are great. They work super well. And the subtlety of the movement, you know, that's something I really want to learn. Plus the clinch, but that's another subject. So yeah, those are the three I practice, and another one that I want to do. And one of the main reasons, or the main reason, that I'm not practicing a lot of footwork, or head movement for that matter, is I'm trying to gain weight. I'm trying to make this belly super big. My goal is to gain so much fat that my legs naturally transform from carrying all my weight, because I'll still do slow burst, you know, exercises like walking, climbing, stuff like that. You know, things that build natural strength over time. By the way, don't walk upstairs. You're cheating yourself. Walk up an actual hill with uneven ground. it engages the calf. Trust me, that's going to be my secret. I'm going to gain a bunch of weight, and I'm going to walk up mountains with my feet, barefoot if possible. And I'm going to build incredible calves, incredible thighs, and then once I've gotten to like 220, 230, and I've got the physical strength from carrying that weight, and I know it's not going anywhere, then I'm going to shred up.
Yeah.